Santa Incubus Tales Conquers the Martians, a storybook adventure written and read by Hushcho, illustrated by Hushcho and Kia. Based on the film Santa Claus Conquers the Martians by Glenville Marath and Paul L. Jacobs. As the Martian spaceship landed, Voldar tried something terrible. He tried to sabotage the airlock so that Santa Claus and Ur would be hurt, but Kimar noticed that something was wrong. Voldar set his space ray gun to overload and threw it at Kimar and the others. The mean Martian escaped. Santa picked up the ray gun. "Santa, don't!" Kimar shouted. "It'll explode!" But Santa Claus just laughed. "Ho, ho, ho!" And the ray gun was just like a toy. Ur clapped his hands. Kimar was amazed. "Santa and Ur, I'm sorry for all of this trouble." Kimar bowed his head. "I'll make sure you have a guard at all times. Voldar is dangerous." Santa just laughed and he patted Kimar's shoulder. "Don't worry about it, son. We'll get right to work on these toys for the children. Then maybe we can get back home by Christmas." Kimar frowned and turned away. "I can't let you leave, Santa Claus. The children on Mars need you." Santa Claus slowly nodded his head. "We'll see. The children do need hope and love. That's something every child, and every adult too, shouldn't go without." Kimar smiled softly and turned back to face Santa and Ur. "Yes, let me show you to the workshop we've set up for you. I hope it will be efficient for you." "Efficient!" Santa laughed again. His belly shook, and Ur laughed too when he saw that. Santa and Ur started to look around the workshop. It was very nice, very clean. Santa thought it was a little too sterile and not very homely. But he, as always, considered his duty more important than his workspace. So he started to push buttons on the console, and Ur and Droppo helped him to make toys. In the caverns underneath the big living dome, Voldar stumbled in darkness, trying to escape Kimar's men. At last it seemed that he had lost them. Surrounded by pitch black, he shouted defiantly at the other Martians. "I swear it!" he screamed. "There will be no Santa Claus on Mars. No joy, no happiness, and above all no kindness. It will only turn us into nincompoops and weaklings. The pride of the warriors of Mars will not be insulted by such stupid things as toys and gifts, or being nice to each other, laughing. Bah!" While everyone was at dinner, Droppo snuck out. Kimar's wife, Lady Momar, had made Santa Claus an extra suit, and Droppo had fashioned a beard for himself out of cotton. He was dressed as Santa. Ever since Droppo first met Santa Claus, he wanted to be like him. So he decided he would dress up in this suit and go make toys in the workshop. He was so excited. He walked into the darkened workshop and looked around for the light switch. But Voldar was already there. He had set bombs in the workshop and in the rooms around it. He was sure that would stop Santa Claus. Voldar stepped out of the shadows and pointed his ray gun at Droppo. "Santa Claus! This is lucky. For me. It's the end for you, though." It was about that time that Jar's rocket landed on Mars. He walked out onto the landing pad and entered the main dome. Nobody seemed to be around. He tried to concentrate on the psychic residue around him. All of his people could tell the history of things just by touching them, so he tried to see where Ur had been. It was very difficult. He walked into the darkened workshop and thought he saw something moving. Then he got closer and saw it was Droppo, tied up. He had wiggled out of his coat, but the special cables Voldar had tied him up with kept him tied. Jar reached out and removed them. It was impossible to tie up an incubus for very long. It was another special power. No kind of ropes could hold long against Jar's touch. He pulled the beard down, and the gag behind it too. "You've got to get Santa! Hurry! Voldar planted bombs all around here, but I know he didn't set them right. He's gone crazy!" Droppo was frantic. "I'll try to stop the bombs." Jar was worried. "But you might—" "Don't worry about me." Droppo got up and started with the bomb on the console in the workshop. "Hurry and get Santa and Ur. You have to make sure they're safe." Jar knew Droppo was right. He didn't know anything about Martian bombs or much of anything else either Martian. So he nodded his head and ran off to find Santa and Ur. They were both coming back to the workshop after dinner. When Ur saw Jar rushing down the corridor towards him, he launched into the air, just like he had when Jar first woke him up, the first day he came to Fantasies. Santa looked on with surprise, and then laughed, happy to see Jar again. From the floor, Jar waved his hands. Santa, we have to get help for your friend in the workshop. Voldar's planted bombs all around, but they're also not set properly. Our friend, Droppo?" Opened his eyes wide and helped Jar up, hugging to his arm. "Did he have kind of a big nose and big bright eyes?" Jar nodded yes. "That's him." But just then the ground shook. There was a huge, terrible sound. "Oh no!" Hugged his arms tightly around Jar's arm. "Droppo!" "Let's hurry!" Santa Claus led the way, and and Jar ran right behind him. As they got closer to the workshop, they saw it was fine, but a horrible roar of wind came from nearby. They could hear Droppo calling, "Help! Help!" So they followed his voice. All kinds of dirt and debris flew all around. It was like a storm was blowing through the dome. As they found Droppo, they discovered why. The dome had been blown open. Voldar really had miscalculated. He only meant to destroy the workshop and the toys, but instead one of the bombs misfired before Droppo could get to it. If it weren't stopped, it could lead to the destruction of the whole living dome. Droppo held on for dear life to a piece of pipe. The room, a storeroom for machinery, was being sucked out into space. Voldar watched Santa and the others from a safe distance, holding a remote detonator in his hand. His finger came closer to the button that would explode all of the bombs. The pipe that Droppo was holding broke, and he went flying towards the huge hole in the dome. Leaped out and grabbed his wrist. But then was pulled towards the hole, and Jar reached out to take Ur's hand. Then it was Jar's turn. But Santa held Jar's arm, and with an amazing strength, greater than any human, demon, or Martian, he pulled them all back. He pulled them all out of harm's way where they could keep safe. "We have to do something," Santa said to the others. "We can't let those good Martian people get hurt." Even though Voldar was angry and he thought he hated Santa Claus, his heart began to warm a little bit. He felt bad for what he had done. He walked closer to Santa and raised the remote control in his hands. He pressed a button, and all of the bombs deactivated. Santa put a hand on Voldar's shoulder. "That's the right thing to do, son." Voldar broke down and cried. "I don't know why you care about us. I don't know why any of you saved Droppo, or why you want to save the other Martian people." But Santa Claus, Jar, and Droppo just laughed. Santa patted Voldar on the back. "I'm Santa Claus." Santa then reached out and took Jar's hand. "Let's fix this dome. Then everyone will be safe and we can finish making all those toys." Jar nodded his head. "Let's do this." They both raised their hands and swept them through the air. Suddenly everything glowed a beautiful color, and everything shone so bright like glitter in dreams. The dome was fixed. Santa tapped the side of his nose with his finger and looked at Voldar. That's what a little love can do. So Jar joined Santa, and Droppo in the workshop to make toys. Jar helped to fix the machines to make toys for the adults too. Santa put him in charge of the special toys. Everything went so well and so smoothly. Kimar had wanted to punish Voldar by banishing him from the dome and the people, but Santa Claus said that Voldar had learned his lesson. There had been enough hurting. Suggested that Voldar could help Droppo, who still wanted to be just like Santa Claus. Santa thought that was a very good idea. Kimar agreed. So Voldar helped Droppo, and they all made toys together. After a little while, Santa and his friends had made plenty of toys. Santa, and Jar decided that they would go home in Jar's rocket. Kimar was a little worried. "But Santa," he said, "we need you so much on Mars. What will we do without you? You've brought the spirit of the season to us all." "You have a wonderful Santa Claus of your own in Droppo," Santa replied, "and he has his very own elf with Mr. Voldar. You don't need me." Kimar threw his arms around Santa and hugged him tightly. "I hope you'll return to Mars one day and visit us, Santa." Santa nodded his head and hugged back. "Of course I will, Mr. Kimar, and Lady Momar and all of you others too. But I must get home and finish the toys in time for Christmas. If we hurry, we can make it in time." Ur hugged close to Jar, so in love. They waved goodbye to their new friends. Jar waved to Droppo. "Good luck," he called to the Martian Santa. Santa Claus laughed loudly. "Ho, ho, ho!" He walked into the rocket. "Merry Christmas, everyone." Jar and Ur entered too, and they closed the door behind them. The Martians all watched as the rocket took off and sailed into space. They would have a lovely Christmas. Now they knew the meaning of the Yuletide spirit. Santa Claus, Ur, and Jar returned to the North Pole, where they helped to finish the toys. Ur had the most wonderful, magical Christmas. Later, Jar and Ur left the North Pole so that Santa could go on his yearly trip to deliver all the presents. All of their friends and family stopped by to visit. Ur got his crayons and drew a picture, and Jar loved it so much that he had it made into cards and gave one to every one of their loved ones. He framed the picture and put it on the wall in the loft above Fantasies. Jar didn't really need to sleep, but he curled up in the bed with Ur on Christmas Eve. They could hear sleigh bells in the air. They both smiled as they fell asleep. The next morning there were wonderful presents under the tree. Some were from each other, and some were from Santa Claus, their friend. Some were from the rest of their family. Chana, Woofy, Hawkeye, Dee-Tee, Zelix, and Lapang were all there to open presents. And they knew that all over the world, and even on Mars, Santa had brought joy, hope, and happiness to everyone. Santaclaus, array for Santa Claus. You spell it Santaclaus, array for Santa Claus. Hooray for Santa Claus. Yay, yay for Santa Claus. He's fat and round, but jumping Jiminy. He can climb down any chimney. When we hear sleigh bells ring, our hearts go ting-a-ling, 'cause there'll be presents under the tree. Hooray for Santa Claus. Now all year long at the North Pole, he's busy making toys, but he knows just what you're doing, so you better be good girls and boys. Hang up that mistletoe, soon you'll hear ho ho ho. On Christmas Day you'll wake up and you'll say, hooray for Santa Claus. Yeah, 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 hooray! Hang up that mistletoe, soon you'll hear ho ho ho. On Christmas Day you'll wake up and you'll say, hooray for Santa Claus. Santaclaus, hooray for Santa Claus. You spell it Santaclaus, hooray for Santa Claus. Hooray for Santa Claus. Hooray for Santa Claus.